It was the scream that shattered the silence of a rainy Boston night. Not a scream of terror, but of command. When 24-year-old waitress Clara O'Malley burst out of that diner and yelled, "Don't get in the car!" She didn't just save a man's life, she accidentally started a war. The man standing with his hand on the door handle wasn't just a customer. He was Dante Rossi, the most feared underworld figure on the East Coast. What happened in the next 5 seconds would erase Clara's old life forever. The explosion was just the beginning. The real danger wasn't the bomb, it was the man she saved. The rain in South Boston didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday at Sal's Corner, a greasy spoon diner that smelled permanently of burnt coffee and floor wax. Clara O'Malley wiped the counter for the 50th time that night, her eyes stinging from exhaustion. She was invisible here. That was the point. After her father, a brilliant but indebted mechanic named Jack O'Malley, had passed away, leaving her nothing but bills, Clara had learned that keeping her head down was the only way to survive. She wore a stained apron, her brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, and comfortable shoes that were falling apart. There was only one customer left. He sat in the corner booth, the one with the flickering light bulb that Sal refused to fix. He had been coming in every Tuesday for a month. He never spoke much. He ordered black coffee and dry wheat toast. He wore suits that cost more than the diner's annual revenue, Italian wool, charcoal grey, tailored to hide the gun Clara knew he was carrying. She had grown up around rough men. She knew the bulge of a shoulder holster when she saw it. This was Dante Rossi. Clara knew the name, of course. Everyone in Boston knew the Rossi family. They controlled the unions, the docks, and the construction contracts from the North End to Seaport. Dante was the eldest son, the butcher in a Brioni suit, according to the tabloids. "Refill?" Clara asked, holding the pot. Dante looked up. His eyes were dark, rimmed with the kind of fatigue that comes from looking over your shoulder for a decade. "No. Check." His voice was a low rumble, scratching against the silence of the empty diner. Clara tore the slip from her pad and placed it face down. "It's on the house, if you leave a big tip," she joked weakly, a habit she couldn't break. Dante didn't smile. He pulled a money clip from his jacket, peeled off a crisp $100 bill, and slid it across the formica. "Keep the change." He stood up. He was tall, imposing, moving with a predator's grace. He adjusted his cufflinks, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the door. Clara watched him go. She grabbed the $100 bill, groceries for 2 weeks, and moved to clear his cup. As she looked out the rain-streaked window, she saw him heading toward his car. It was a vintage 1969 Mustang Boss 429, jet black, a mechanic's dream. Her dad would have killed to work on an engine like that. Dante paused at the curb, fishing for his keys. Clara's eyes drifted down to the car. The street lamp above flickered, casting a sudden, harsh light on the wet pavement. That's when she saw it. It was subtle. To anyone else, it would have been just a shadow or a piece of trash caught under the chassis. But Clara had spent her childhood under cars holding flashlights for her father. She knew the underbelly of a Mustang like the back of her hand. There was a wire, a thin, red wire hanging loose near the exhaust manifold, coupled with a small, dark brick taped awkwardly to the fuel tank. A distinct, oily sheen was pooling near the rear tire, too thin for oil, too pungent for water. Gasoline. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The wire was connected to the starter solenoid. The moment he turned the key, the spark would hit the leaking gas and the C4. Dante opened the door. Clara didn't think. She didn't consider that this man was a murderer. She didn't consider that involving herself in Mafia business was a death sentence. She vaulted over the counter, scattering silverware. "Hey!" Sal yelled from the kitchen. Clara burst through the diner door, the bell jingling violently. The cold rain hit her face instantly. Dante had one leg inside the car. He was sliding the key into the ignition. "Don't get in the car!" Clara screamed, her voice cracking with terror. Dante froze. His hand hovered over the key. He looked up, his brow furrowed, staring at the crazy waitress standing in the rain, pointing a trembling finger at him. "Get away from it!" she yelled, sprinting toward him. "Don't turn the key!" Dante withdrew his leg slowly. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed. He stepped out of the vehicle, his hand instinctively going to the inside of his jacket. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cold as ice. "A setup?" "Look under the tank!" Clara gasped, skidding to a halt 5 feet from him. She was drenched. The solenoid wire. "It's rigged. There's a brick on the tank." Dante stared at her for a heartbeat, searching for a lie in her eyes. Then he crouched down, keeping his eyes on her, and glanced under the chassis. He saw it. He stood up instantly, his face draining of color, replaced by a mask of pure rage. He began to back away, grabbing Clara's arm with a grip like iron. "Run!" he muttered. "What? Run!" he roared. They scrambled backward, diving behind a concrete planter just outside the diner's entrance. A second later, the mechanism didn't wait for the key. It was on a timer, or perhaps a remote trigger. Boom! The sound wasn't a noise. It was a pressure wave. The Mustang disintegrated. A fireball erupted into the night sky, turning the rain into steam. Glass from the diner windows shattered inward. The heat was intense, singing the hair on Clara's arms. Debris rained down, twisted metal, burning rubber, and pieces of the leather seat where Dante had been sitting seconds ago. Silence followed, save for the car alarm of a nearby sedan and the crackle of flames. Clara lay on the wet pavement, coughing, her ears ringing. She tried to push herself up, but a heavy hand pushed her back down. Dante was hovering over her. He wasn't looking at the burning car. He was scanning the rooftops, his gun now drawn, a matte black Beretta. "Stay down," he hissed. "My diner," Clara stammered, looking at the shattered windows of Sal's. "Forget the diner," Dante said, his eyes locking onto hers. They were terrifyingly intense. "You saw the wire. How?" My dad was a mechanic," she managed to say. "I know cars." Dante looked at the burning wreck, then back at her. He pulled out a phone and dialed a number. "It's me. I'm alive. The car is gone. Send the cleanup crew, and bring the SUV, now." He hung up and looked at Clara. For the first time, she saw the danger she was in. It wasn't the bomb. It was him. "You saved my life," Dante said. It wasn't a thank you. It was a statement of fact. "I have to go," Clara said, scrambling to her feet. "I have to call the police." Dante stood up, towering over her. He holstered his gun and grabbed her wrist. Not aggressively, but with a firmness that allowed no argument. "You can't call the police," he said. "Whoever planted that bomb is watching. They wanted me dead. Now they know you're the reason I'm still breathing." Clara pulled her arm, panic rising in her throat. "That's not my problem. Let me go." "It became your problem the second you opened your mouth," Dante said grimly. Black SUVs were screeching around the corner, their headlights cutting through the smoke. "If you stay here, you're dead within the hour. The Moretti family doesn't leave loose ends." The lead SUV screeched to a halt. 4 men in tactical gear jumped out, forming a perimeter. "Get in," Dante ordered, opening the back door of the armored Cadillac. "No." Clara backed away. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Dante stepped close to her, ignoring the chaos around them. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Clara, look at me. I am a bad man. But the men who did this, They are monsters. If they find you, they will torture you to find out what you know. I am offering you the only chance you have to see the sunrise." Clara looked at the burning car. She looked at Sal, who was cowering inside the kitchen. She looked at Dante's hand, extended toward her. She realized with a sinking heart that he was right. Her normal life had exploded along with that Mustang. She took his hand. The drive was silent. The armored Cadillac Escalade was hermetically sealed, shutting out the noise of the sirens that were finally approaching the diner. Clara sat on the plush leather seat, shivering. Her uniform was soaked, smelling of rain and smoke. Beside her, Dante was already working. He was on his phone, speaking in rapid-fire Italian. His tone was lethal. Clara caught fragments of words she recognized from movies. Traditore, traitor, vendetta, Moretti. They drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading toward the wealthy estates of Brookline. The car finally turned through a massive wrought-iron gate, winding up a long driveway lined with ancient oak trees. The destination was a sprawling stone mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home. "Out," Dante said as the car stopped. Clara stepped out. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold. Dante didn't wait for her. He marched up the steps, his security detail trailing behind. Inside, the house was breathtakingly cold. Marble floors, high ceilings, expensive art that looked like it had been bought for investment rather than enjoyment. "Silvio!" Dante barked. A man appeared from a side room. He was older than Dante, with silver hair and a scar running through his left eyebrow. This was Silvio Mantovani, Dante's consigliere and closest advisor. Silvio's eyes widened when he saw Dante, then narrowed when he saw Clara. "Boss, we heard the report." "A bomb?" "Plastic explosives on the tank," Dante said, stripping off his ruined jacket and tossing it to a maid who appeared from nowhere. "Rigged to the starter." Silvio's face went pale. "Impossible. The car was in the garage at the club until 2 hours ago. Only our guys had access." "Exactly," Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "It was an inside job, Silvio. Someone in the inner circle wants me dead." Dante turned to Clara, who was hugging herself in the middle of the foyer. "And this," Dante gestured to her, "is the reason I'm not a stain on the pavement. Clara O'Malley." Silvio looked her up and down with suspicion. "A civilian? Why is she here, Dante? She's a liability." "She saw the wire," Dante said. "She recognized the rig. She's a mechanic's daughter." Silvio stepped closer to Clara. He smelled of cigars and expensive cologne. "Who sent you, girl? The Irish mob? The Russians?" "Nobody sent me," Clara snapped, finding a spark of her Irish temper. "I serve coffee. I saw a car leaking gas and a wire that shouldn't be there. Next time, I'll let your boss blow up." Dante let out a short, dry chuckle. It was a terrifying sound. "She's got fire." "I like that." "She can't stay here," Silvio insisted. "If there is a mole, this house isn't safe, and we can't babysit a waitress while we're at war with the Morettis." "She stays," Dante commanded. "Put her in the East Wing, get her dry clothes. Post Rocco at her door. No one goes in or out without my permission." Dante walked up to Clara. He towered over her, his dark eyes searching hers. For a moment, the hardness in his face softened. "You saved me," he said quietly. "I pay my debts. You are under my protection now, Clara. But understand this. Until I find the rat in my organization, you are a prisoner here. If you try to run, my men will catch you. If the Morettis catch you, they will kill you. Do you understand?" Clara looked around the opulent, cold hall. It was a prison, yes, but it was a castle. "I understand," she whispered. "Good." Dante turned away. Silvio, get the capos together. I want to know who had access to the car, and get me a list of everyone who knew I was at Sal's tonight." As Clara was led away by a silent maid, she glanced back. Dante was pouring himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly. It was the only sign that he was human. She was taken to a room larger than her entire apartment. The bed was covered in silk. The bathroom had a jacuzzi tub. The maid left her a set of silk pajamas and a heavy robe. Clara showered, scrubbing the smell of gasoline from her skin. When she came out, she found a tray of food, steak, roasted vegetables, and a glass of red wine waiting on a small table. She was starving, but she couldn't eat. She walked to the window. Below in the courtyard, she saw men patrolling with assault rifles. She was trapped. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, clutching the robe tighter. It was Dante. He had changed into a black button-down shirt and slacks. He looked cleaner, but the intensity was still there. He held 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. "I didn't think you'd drink the wine," he said, setting the bottle down. "My enemies have a habit of poisoning things." "Is it poisoned?" Clara asked, eyeing the food. "Not tonight. I checked it myself." He poured a shot of whiskey and handed it to her. "Drink. It helps with the shock." Clara took the glass. Her hands were trembling. She downed it in one go, coughing as the burn hit her throat. "Why me?" she asked. "Why did you bring me here, really? You could have just given me money and told me to run." Dante leaned against the dresser, crossing his arms. The muscles in his forearms flexed. "Because if I gave you money, you'd be dead by morning. The person who planted that bomb was watching. They saw you run out. They saw you scream. They know you can identify the car, the timing, maybe even something you didn't realize you saw." He took a step closer. The air in the room seemed to get heavier. "And," he added, his voice lower, "I don't trust anyone right now, Clara. Except, strangely, you. Why trust me? Because you had nothing to gain by saving me. Everyone else in my life, my captains, my business partners, even my brother, they all profit if I die. You just acted." He looked at her with a strange curiosity. "Tell me about the car, the wire. How did you know?" "My dad," Clara said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Jack O'Malley. He had a shop in Dorchester. He taught me everything. How to fix a transmission, how to spot a leak, how to hotwire a Ford." Dante smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, transforming his face from frightening to devastatingly handsome. "A waitress who can hotwire a car. You are full of surprises, Clara O'Malley." Suddenly the door burst open. Rocco, the massive guard, stumbled in. "Boss, we have a problem." Dante's demeanor shifted instantly. The smile vanished. The killer returned. "What?" "We checked the security footage from the diner," Rocco said, breathless. "Before you got there, we saw a car circling the block, a silver Jaguar." Dante went still. "My brother's car." "Enzo?" Clara asked. Dante didn't answer her. He looked at Rocco. "Where is Enzo now?" "He's downstairs," Rocco said. "He just arrived. He says he was worried about you." Dante pulled his gun from his waistband. He checked the chamber. "Stay here," he told Clara. "Lock the door." "Dante!" Clara called out as he reached the door. He paused. "Be careful," she said. He looked at her, a flicker of emotion in his dark eyes. Then he was gone. Clara rushed to the door and locked it. But she didn't stay put. Her curiosity, the same instinct that made her look under the Mustang, took over. She went to the heavy oak door and pressed her ear against it. She heard nothing. She noticed a ventilation grate near the floor. It was old, probably connecting to the main hall below. She knelt down, removed the cover with her fingernails, and peered through the slats. She could see into the main library below. Dante stood in the center of the room. Opposite him was a younger man who looked just like him, but with a weaker chin and shiftier eyes. Enzo Rossi. "I'm telling you, brother, I was at the casino," Enzo was shouting. "I heard about the explosion on the police scanner." "You drive a silver Jaguar, Enzo," Dante said calmly, his gun at his side. "The same car seen circling Sal's 10 minutes before the blast." "Coincidence," Enzo pleaded. "Dante, we are blood. You think I would side with the Morettis?" "I think you've always been jealous," Dante said. "I think you owe gambling debts you can't pay. And I think the Morettis offered to wipe your slate clean if you took me out." "No!" Enzo screamed. Then Clara saw something that made her blood run cold. Behind Dante, in the shadows of the library bookshelf, Silvio, the trusted advisor, was moving. He was reaching into his jacket. He wasn't reaching for a handkerchief. He was reaching for a suppressed pistol. Dante was focused on Enzo. He didn't see Silvio behind him. Clara scrambled up. She had to do something. If she screamed, would they hear her? She grabbed a heavy bronze statue from the bedside table. She ran to the window. It was locked. She ran back to the vent. "Dante! Behind you!" She screamed into the vent as loud as she could. The scream reverberated through the ventilation shaft like a ghost's wail. "Dante! Behind you!" Dante Rossi didn't hesitate. He didn't turn to look. He dropped. A fraction of a second later, a bullet shredded the air where his head had been, burying itself in the mahogany bookshelf. The sound of the suppressed shot was a sickening thwip, followed instantly by the shattering of wood. Dante hit the floor, rolling behind a heavy leather armchair. He fired blindly over the top of the chair. 2 shots, deafening in the enclosed space. Silvio Mantovani, the man who had been like a second father to him, ducked behind a marble pillar. "You missed, old man," Dante roared, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I never miss, Dante," Silvio shouted back. "The girl, she has good lungs. I'll cut them out of her first." Enzo, Dante's younger brother, stood frozen in the middle of the room, his face a mask of confusion and terror. "Silvio, what are you doing? You said we were just going to talk." "Shut up, you idiot," Silvio snapped, firing 2 more rounds that decimated the armchair Dante was hiding behind. "I told you I'd make you boss. I didn't say your brother would walk away." Dante gritted his teeth. He checked his magazine. 6 rounds left. "Enzo!" Dante yelled. "Get down!" But Enzo didn't move. He looked from Silvio to Dante, the reality of the betrayal crashing down on him. He had been jealous. Yes, he had been weak. But he hadn't wanted this. "You used me," Enzo whispered. Suddenly, the library doors kicked open. 3 men in tactical gear, Silvio's loyalists, poured in, weapons raised. Dante was pinned. He was dead. He knew the angles. He couldn't take out 4 men before they turned him into Swiss cheese. Enzo looked at his brother. For the first time in his life, his eyes were clear. "Go to hell, Silvio!" Enzo screamed. Enzo didn't dive for cover. He charged the 3 gunmen. It was suicide. A desperate, foolish, redemptive act of suicide. Enzo tackled the lead gunman, his small frame colliding with the armored mercenary. The distraction lasted 3 seconds. The room erupted in gunfire. Enzo's body jerked violently as bullets tore through him, but he held on, jamming the gunman's rifle upward. Those 3 seconds were all Dante needed. He stood up and fired with the precision of a surgeon. 1, 2, 3. Headshot, throat shot, chest shot. The 3 gunmen dropped, but Silvio was still there. As Dante turned, he saw Silvio leveling his pistol at him. Bang! The impact spun Dante around. It felt like a sledgehammer had hit his left shoulder. He stumbled, falling to one knee. His vision blurred. Silvio walked out from behind the pillar, smiling. He walked toward Enzo's crumpled body and kicked it. "Pathetic," Silvio spat. He raised his gun toward Dante's head. "The Rossi dynasty ends tonight. The Morettis pay better, Dante. And they don't have your morals." Dante tried to raise his gun, but his left arm was useless, and his right hand was shaking from shock. Suddenly, the heavy oak door of the library slammed open again. Silvio spun around. It wasn't a gunman. It was Clara. She stood there, holding a fire extinguisher. Before Silvio could adjust his aim, she pulled the pin and sprayed a massive cloud of chemical foam directly into his face. Silvio howled, blinded, firing wildly into the ceiling. "Move!" Clara screamed, dropping the extinguisher and grabbing Dante's good arm. Dante groaned, forcing himself up. The pain was blinding, but the adrenaline was stronger. He fired one shot at Silvio, hitting him in the leg, sending the traitor crashing down. "Kill him!" Dante snarled, trying to aim again. "No time!" Clara yelled, dragging him toward the service exit. "There are more coming. I saw them on the stairs." They stumbled into the hallway. Alarms were blaring now. The mansion was waking up, but half the security team was loyal to Silvio. It was a civil war inside the walls. "The garage!" Dante rasped, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "My car!" "No," Clara said, supporting his weight as they moved through the kitchen. "They'll expect the armored SUVs. They'll have the driveway blocked." "Then how do we get out?" "We don't take the driveway," Clara said, her eyes fierce. "And we don't take an SUV." They burst into the expansive garage. It was filled with Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and the armored Escalades, but Clara ran past them all. She ran to the back corner, where a dust sheet covered a bulky shape. She ripped the sheet off. Beneath it was a 1978 Ford Bronco. Lifted suspension, rusted wheel wells, faded blue paint. It was the groundskeeper's old truck. "You have to be kidding me," Dante muttered, leaning against a workbench, his face pale. "No GPS, no kill switch, and a suspension that can handle the stone wall," Clara said. She popped the hood, jammed a screwdriver across the starter solenoid, just like she had seen her dad do 1,000 times, and the engine roared to life with a choked cough. "Get in!" Dante climbed into the passenger seat, blood soaking his black shirt. Clara jumped into the driver's seat. The garage door began to open, but only halfway. Silvio's men were cutting the power. "Duck!" Clara yelled. She slammed the Bronco into gear and floored it. The heavy truck smashed through the bottom half of the garage door, wood and metal flying everywhere. They skidded onto the gravel. Ahead, the main gate was blocked by 2 black SUVs. Men with rifles were taking positions. "We can't get through that," Dante said, his voice weak. "Turn around." "Hold on," Clara said. She didn't slow down. She didn't aim for the gate. She aimed for the stone garden wall to the left. "Clara, that's a 4-foot drop. It's a Ford," she yelled. They hit the wall at 50 miles per hour. The brickwork exploded. The Bronco went airborne. For a second, they were flying through the dark, rainy night. Then they slammed into the muddy field below. The suspension groaned, metal screamed, and Dante's head hit the dashboard. But the truck kept moving. Clara wrestled the steering wheel, mud spraying in roop tails behind them as she navigated the rough terrain, bypassing the driveway entirely and merging onto the back road 3 miles down. She checked the rearview mirror. No headlights. She looked at Dante. He was slumped against the door, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. "Dante," she whispered. "Still. Here," he mumbled. "Don't stop." Clara gripped the wheel until her knuckles turned white. She was a waitress. She served coffee. Tonight she had saved a Mafia don, blinded a consigliere, and driven a truck through a wall. She drove into the darkness, leaving the burning life she knew behind. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, masking their tracks as Clara drove north. She avoided the highway. Cameras were everywhere, and if Silvio had the resources to turn Dante's own home into a trap, he had the police in his pocket too. Dante was fading. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his shoulder, missing the bone, but he had lost a lot of blood. The interior of the Bronco smelled of copper and old upholstery. "Stay with me, Dante," Clara said, reaching over to shake his knee. "Don't you dare die on me. I don't know where to hide a body." "Funny," Dante breathed, his eyes fluttering open. "You're bossy." "Yeah, well, someone has to be." She turned down a gravel road that was barely marked, deep in the woods near the New Hampshire border. This was the scrapyard, her father's sanctuary. Technically, the bank had seized the land, but it had been sitting abandoned for 2 years. No one came out here. She pulled the Bronco into the main barn, parking it over the inspection pit. She killed the engine and the lights. Absolute darkness wrapped around them, save for the rhythm of the rain on the tin roof. "We're here," she said. She helped Dante out. He was heavy, dead weight against her side. She practically dragged him into the small office adjacent to the garage. It was dusty and cold, but there was a cot in the corner and, crucially, her father's old first aid kit. Jack O'Malley didn't believe in hospitals. He believed in duct tape and whiskey. She pushed Dante onto the cot. He groaned, his face grey and sweaty. Clara scrambled to find the lantern. She lit it, the soft glow illuminating the cluttered room. She found the kit: gauze, antiseptic, a suture kit for stitching upholstery, but it would have to do, and a bottle of isopropyl alcohol. "This is going to hurt," Clara said, her voice trembling slightly. She grabbed a pair of shears and cut away Dante's shirt. The wound was ugly, angry red and oozing. Dante looked at it, then at her. "You a doctor too?" "Mechanic," she said, pouring alcohol over her hands. "Flesh isn't so different from upholstery, just messier." "There's a flask," Dante murmured, pointing to his jacket pocket. "Bourbon." Clara fished it out. She took a swig herself for courage, then handed it to him. "Drink. All of it." He drank. Clara took a deep breath. She poured the alcohol directly into the bullet hole. Dante arched his back, a guttural roar tearing from his throat. His hand gripped the side of the cot so hard the metal bent. I'm sorry," Clara whispered, tears stinging her eyes. She worked quickly, packing the wound with gauze to stop the bleeding. It wasn't deep enough to hit an artery, thank God. She threaded the needle. "Talk to me," she commanded, as she pierced his skin. "Distract yourself." Dante gritted his teeth, sweat dripping from his nose. "About what?" "Why?" she asked, tying the first knot. "Why did Silvio do it?" Dante stared up at the ceiling, his jaw clenched. Greed. Envy. "He thought my father was weak. He thinks I'm soft." "Soft?" Clara scoffed, stitching again. "You're about as soft as a tire iron." "I tried to legitimize," Dante said, his voice straining with pain. "Move the business into construction. Tech. Less blood. The old guard. Silvio. They like the blood. They like the fear." "And Enzo?" Dante's eyes squeezed shut. A tear leaked out, mixing with the sweat. Enzo was a child, always looking for approval. Silvio played him. Clara finished the last stitch. She taped the bandage down and sat back, her hands shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. "He saved you," Clara said softly. "Enzo." At the end. "He did," Dante whispered. He opened his eyes and looked at her. In the dim lantern light, the barrier between boss and civilian, between predator and prey, had dissolved. There was just a man in pain, and the woman who kept saving him. "You should have left me," Dante said. "You could have run into the woods." "I told you," Clara said, wiping her blood-stained hands on a rag. I'm not the kind of person who walks away from a wreck. Dante reached out with his good hand. He touched her cheek. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. You are extraordinary, Clara O'Malley. Clara's breath hitched. The air in the dusty office grew thick. She leaned into his touch for a second, feeling the warmth of his skin. Rest, she said, pulling away gently. I'll take the first watch. She grabbed the gun he had dropped on the table. It was heavy. She walked to the window, peering out into the rainy darkness. Dante watched her silhouette. He had known many dangerous women, assassins, spies, heiresses. But none of them had the quiet, terrifying strength of this waitress in a grease-stained cardigan. He realized then, as he drifted into a feverish sleep, that if he survived this, he would burn the city to the ground for her. 3 days passed in the scrapyard. Dante healed with terrifying speed. It was as if his rage was metabolizing the trauma. By the 3rd morning, he was pacing the small office, doing push-ups with one arm, and planning his revenge. Clara had gone into town once, wearing a baseball cap and driving the Bronco, to buy food and burner phones. She saw her face on the front page of a newspaper at the gas station. Missing waitress, sought in connection with diner explosion. They were painting her as an accomplice. Silvio's reach was deep. We can't stay here, Dante said on the 4th night. He was cleaning his gun, the motion repetitive and calming. Silvio will check the property records eventually. He'll find the link to your father. So where do we go? Clara asked. She was eating cold beans from a can. The glamour of Mafia life was severely lacking. We don't go anywhere, Dante said. He slammed the magazine into the Beretta. We go back. Clara choked on a bean. Excuse me? Silvio has the families confused. He's telling them I'm dead or that I turned traitor. He needs the commission's vote to be officially crowned boss of bosses next week. So I need to prove he's the rat before that vote happens. If I just shoot him, I start a war with the 5 families. They'll think I'm a madman purging my own ranks. I need proof. Dante stood up and walked to the map of Boston, pinned to the wall. He circled a spot in the Seaport district. The Sapphire Club, he said. Silvio's headquarters. In his private office, there is a physical ledger. Black leather. It lists every bribe, every hit, and every payoff from the Moretti family. It's his insurance policy, but it's going to be his tombstone. Great, Clara said. So we walk into a fortress guarded by 50 men, ask for the book, and leave. No, Dante said. He turned to her. I can't walk in. Every guard knows my face. They'll shoot on sight. He looked at her. A heavy silence filled the room. Clara stood up slowly. No way. Absolutely not. Clara, I am a waitress, Dante. I am not a spy. I shake when I pour coffee. You didn't shake when you stitched me up, Dante argued, stepping closer. And they don't know you. Not really. To them you're just a blur from the diner. A name on a file. Silvio saw me. He looked right at me. Silvio will be at the sit-down with the Morettis across town tonight. That's why we have to do it now. The club will be run by his B team. Dante placed his hands on her shoulders. I can teach you. We have 6 hours. You know how to handle pressure. You know how to read people. I've seen you manage a diner full of angry truckers. This is just acting. If I get caught, I will be right outside in the alley, Dante promised, his eyes burning with intensity. You wear an earpiece. I guide you every step. If anything feels wrong, you walk out. If anyone touches you, he touched the gun at his waist. I come in, and I don't stop shooting until everyone is dead. Clara looked at him. She looked at the desperation in his face. This was his only way back, his only way to clear his name and avenge his brother. And, she realized with a start, she wanted to help him. Not just to survive, but because she wanted to see him win. Fine, she exhaled. But if I die, I'm haunting you. 6 hours later. Clara O'Malley didn't exist. In her place stood Vanessa, a high-end bottle service girl. She wore a sleek black dress that she had stolen from a clothesline during their drive back to the city, modified with safety pins to fit like a second skin. Her hair was down, voluminous and curled. She wore dark lipstick and heels that made her legs look miles long. She stood at the velvet rope of the Sapphire Club. Name? The bouncer grunted. Vanessa, Clara purred, affecting a bored, arrogant tone Dante had coached her on. I'm the new girl for the VIP lounge. Marco hired me. Dante had told her Marco was the manager, and that Marco was currently in Aruba. It was a gamble. The bouncer checked his clipboard. Marco didn't tell me nothing. Marco is on a beach drinking mojitos, Clara said, rolling her eyes. Call him if you want. But if I'm late for the Donahue table, I'm telling him it was your fault. The bouncer hesitated. He looked her up and down. The confidence worked. Go ahead, he grumbled, unhooking the rope. Clara walked in. The bass of the music hit her chest like a physical punch. The club was a sea of flashing lights, expensive suits, and cigarette smoke. I'm in, she whispered. The tiny microphone was taped inside her cleavage. The earpiece was hidden by her hair. Good, Dante's voice came through, crisp and clear in her ear. It was a comforting anchor in the chaos. Head to the back. Look for the platinum elevator. It requires a key card, but wait for a waiter to use it and slip in. Clara navigated the crowd. She felt eyes on her. Hungry, assessing eyes. She kept her chin up, moving with a predator's purpose. She spotted the elevator. A waiter with a tray of champagne was approaching it. She quickened her pace. Just as he swiped his card, she stumbled, accidentally bumping into him. Oh, watch it, the waiter snapped. So clumsy of me. She smiled dazzlingly, steadying the tray with one hand while her foot jammed the closing door. Let me get that for you. She slipped inside with him. The waiter looked at her suspiciously. You're not allowed up here. 4th floor is private. I have a special request for the boss, she said, winking. The elevator opened on the 4th floor. The noise of the club vanished, replaced by thick carpets and silence. Turn left, Dante directed. 3rd door on the right. Silvio's office. The hallway was empty. Clara moved fast. She reached the door. It was locked. Hairpin, Dante said. Clara pulled the pin from her hair. She knelt down. This wasn't a car ignition, but the principle was similar. Tension and release. Click. The door swung open. She slipped inside and closed it. The office was dark, smelling of cigars. Desk, bottom drawer. False bottom, Dante commanded. Clara rushed to the massive oak desk. She pulled the bottom drawer. It was full of files. She felt around the edges. There, a latch. She popped the false bottom. There it was, the black leather ledger. I got it, she breathed. Get out, now, Dante urged. Something's wrong. The perimeter guards are moving. Clara shoved the book into the small of her back, securing it with the tight sash of her dress. She turned to the door. The handle turned before she could reach it. Clara froze. The door opened. The lights flickered on. Standing in the doorway wasn't a guard. It was Silvio Mantovani. He was leaning on a cane, his leg heavily bandaged. Behind him stood 2 massive enforcers. Silvio's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed into a cruel smile. Well, well, Silvio chuckled, limping into the room. The waitress, I must say, you clean up nice. Clara backed against the desk. Dante, she whispered. I'm coming, Dante roared in her ear. I'm breaching the back door. Where is he? Silvio asked, closing the distance. "I know he's close. He wouldn't send a girl to do a man's job alone." "He's in hell," Clara spat, trying to buy time. "Waiting for you." Silvio laughed. "You have spirit. I'll enjoy breaking it." He lunged for her. Clara didn't scream. She grabbed a heavy crystal ashtray from the desk and swung it with all her might. It connected with Silvio's bad knee. He screamed, crumpling to the floor. "Get her!" he shrieked to his men. Clara scrambled toward the window. It was 4 stories up. No escape. The 2 enforcers grabbed her. One pinned her arms, the other raised a fist. Crash. The heavy mahogany doors of the office didn't just open, they disintegrated. Dante Rossi stood there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing tactical black, holding a customized assault rifle. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated violence. "Let her go!" The room exploded into violence. Dante didn't wait for an invitation. He fired 2 controlled bursts. The first enforcer, the one holding Clara, jerked backward as the rounds caught him in the shoulder, spinning him away from her. The second enforcer dove behind a leather sofa, returning fire. "Get down!" Dante roared, flipping a heavy oak table onto its side for cover. Clara scrambled across the floor, her heels skidding on the polished wood. She dove behind the table just as the wood splintered above her head from incoming fire. "You're late!" she yelled over the deafening noise of the gunshots. "Traffic was murder," Dante shouted back, checking his ammo count. He looked at her, his eyes wild but focused. "You have the book?" Clara tapped the small of her back. "Right here." "Good. Now we just have to survive the exit." Silvio was crawling toward the door, dragging his shattered knee. He reached for a pistol dropped by one of the guards. Dante saw him. He stood up, exposing himself to fire, and aimed. "Dante, no!" Clara screamed, grabbing his belt. "The guard's in the hall. We have to go." Dante hesitated. The killing urge was strong. Silvio was right there, but the hallway was filling with the sound of shouting men. If he took the time to finish Silvio, they would be overrun. "You live for another hour, old man," Dante snarled. He grabbed a flashbang grenade from his tack vest, something he'd picked up from his private armory, pulled the pin, and tossed it toward the door. Bang! A blinding white light filled the room, accompanied by a concussion that rattled teeth. The guards in the hallway screamed, blinded. "Window," Dante ordered. "We're on the 4th floor," Clara protested. "Trust me." Dante grabbed a heavy steel chair and hurled it through the plate glass window. The city air rushed in, cold and loud. Below, the alley was dark. "Jump!" Dante yelled. Clara looked down. There was a fire escape landing, but it was 10 feet down and 5 feet across. A suicide jump for a girl in heels. She didn't think. She kicked off her heels, climbed the ledge, and leapt. For a terrifying second, she was weightless. Then she crashed onto the metal grating of the fire escape, the impact jarring her bones. She rolled, scraping her arms, but she was alive. Dante landed beside her a second later with a heavy thud, landing perfectly in a crouch. "Go, go, go!" he urged, pushing her down the rusting metal stairs. Bullets began to ping against the railings. Silvio's men were at the window. They raced down the stairs, the metal clanging loudly in the night. When they reached the bottom, they spilled into the alleyway. It was a dead end, blocked by dumpsters and a chain-link fence. "Over the fence," Dante commanded. He laced his fingers together to boost her up. Clara scrambled over, tearing the expensive dress, her bare feet hitting the wet asphalt on the other side. Dante vaulted it with ease, despite his healing shoulder. They sprinted onto the main street, blending into the late-night crowd leaving the theater district. They were a sight, a barefoot woman in a torn cocktail dress and a man in tactical gear. But in the chaos of the city, they were just another urban oddity. "The car," Dante panted, pointing to a nondescript Honda Civic, parked 2 blocks away. I boosted it earlier. They piled in. Dante hot-wired it again. He was getting good at Clara's tricks, and they peeled away into traffic just as sirens began to wail in the distance toward the Sapphire Club. Clara slumped in the passenger seat, her adrenaline crashing. She pulled the black ledger from her dress and threw it on the dashboard. "We got it," she whispered, her voice shaking. Dante looked at the book, then at her. He reached over and took her hand. His grip was tight, possessive. "You were incredible," he said. "You took out Silvio's knee." I used an ashtray. Clara let out a breathless laugh that sounded close to a sob. I hit a Mafia consigliere with her ashtray. "Effective," Dante grinned, but the smile faded quickly. "Now we finish it. The commission meets at dawn. We have 6 hours to decode this book and present it to Don Falcone." "Falcone?" Clara asked. "The head of the 5 families." "The only man Silvio fears. If we prove Silvio has been selling territory to the Morettis and skimming off the top, Falcone will authorize the hit himself. If we fail, Falcone kills us both for interrupting the meeting." Clara looked at the ledger. It was just numbers and dates. "Do you know how to read this?" "No," Dante admitted. "Silvio used a cipher. He was an accountant before he was a killer." Clara opened the book. She stared at the columns. Numbers, dates, engine parts. "Wait," she said, squinting under the passing streetlights. "This isn't just random numbers. 429 CJ, 3521 Cleveland, top loader 4 speed." Dante frowned. "What?" "These are engine specs," Clara said, her eyes widening. "Classic Ford engine codes. My dad used to make me memorize them as flashcards." She traced a line. "Look, 289 hypo. That's the engine for a 65 Mustang. The number next to it, $50,000. That's the payout." Dante looked at her, stunned. "He used car parts as a code? Because he knew I loved cars?" "No," Clara said, a realization dawning on her. "Because he didn't know cars, he used a cheat sheet, and I bet I know where it is." "Where?" "The mechanic shop he owns on the east side. Vinny's Auto. I saw the invoice in the false bottom of the drawer, but I didn't grab it. I didn't think it mattered." "We don't need the invoice," Dante said, his eyes darkening. "If you can read the code, you are the key, Clara. You have to translate it for the commission." Clara went cold. "You want me to walk into a room with the 5 most dangerous men in America and read a ledger?" "I won't let them touch you," Dante vowed. "But it has to be you. If I read it, they'll say I faked it. If a civilian reads, it's the truth." Clara looked out the window. The city was passing by, a blur of lights. She could ask him to stop. She could run. But she thought of the bomb. She thought of Enzo dying on the floor. She thought of the way Dante looked at her, like she was the only real thing in his world. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's go see the Don." The meeting took place in the back room of a dim North End restaurant. 5 men sat around a circular table, centered by the frail but terrifying Don Falcone. Silvio Mantovani sat in a wheelchair, his leg casted, offering a smug smile to the commission. "Dante Rossi is dead," Silvio lied smoothly. "The explosion took him. I am the only logical successor." "I object," a deep voice boomed. The heavy doors creaked open. Dante walked in, battered but regal in a black suit, with Clara on his arm. Silvio's face drained of color. "A ghost!" Silvio gasped. "I'm hard to kill," Dante replied. He slammed the black leather ledger onto the table. "This proves Silvio has been stealing from the commission for years." Falcone squinted at the book. "This is gibberish. Numbers." "It's a cipher," Dante said, stepping back. "And she is the key." Clara stood alone before the most dangerous men in America. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she opened the book. The numbers weren't random to her. They were a language she had spoken her whole life. "Page 10, Clara announced, her voice steady. "Entry 427 Cobra Jet. Date July 4th. Amount 200,000. Falcone's advisor checked his files. "We lost a heroin shipment that day. Value 200,000. Clara flipped the page. "Boss 302, September 1st. $500,000. "The missing union bribe," the advisor whispered. Clara read 5 more entries. Each engine code matched a loss the families had suffered. Each amount matched the cash Silvio had pocketed. The silence in the room was absolute. "You broke the code of silence," Falcone wheezed, looking at Silvio with disgust. "You stole from the family. It was business," Silvio screamed, desperate tears streaming down his face. Falcone nodded to Dante. "It is your right." Dante placed a silver revolver on the table. "The police are on their way. You can go to prison for life, or you can take the honorable exit." Outside, sirens began to wail. Silvio looked at the gun, then at Dante, and finally at Clara. With a snarl of pure hate, he grabbed the weapon and swung it toward Clara. Bang! Dante was faster. He fired from the hip, putting a single bullet through Silvio's forehead. The traitor slumped back, dead. As the SWAT team pounded on the restaurant doors, Dante turned to Clara, urgency in his eyes. "Tell them I kidnapped you. Tell them I forced you to do this. You can walk away, Clara. You can go back to a normal life." Clara grabbed the lapels of his suit, pulling him close. "I don't want a normal life. I hate serving coffee." "Clara, they're coming." "You said you needed someone you could trust," she whispered. "I'm not a victim, Dante. I'm the woman who saved the boss." The doors smashed open. "Police! Down on the ground!" Dante smiled, wrapping his arms around her. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he murmured. "It's a dangerous life." "I like danger," Clara replied, burying her face in his chest. 6 months later, the sign above the garage read, "O'Malley and Rossi Customs." Inside, the shop was pristine. Clara wiped grease from her hands as a jet-black 1969 Boss 429 pulled into the bay. Dante stepped out. He looked relaxed, the weight of the war finally gone from his shoulders. "How's she running?" he asked. "Purring like a kitten," Clara grinned. "But the driver needs work." Dante laughed and pulled her into a deep kiss. They had survived the explosion, the betrayal, and the law. Now, the mechanic and the mob boss were building something new, together. And that is the incredible story of Clara and Dante. From a rainy night at a diner to the head of the underground table, Clara proved that sometimes the person serving your coffee is the most dangerous and loyal person in the room. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you saw a wire on a stranger's car, would you have screamed, or would you have walked away? Clara's choice cost her safety, but it gained her a legacy. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance, danger, and betrayal, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Share this video with a friend who loves a good plot twist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.